we focus on helping you claim what's rightfully yours, your health and your freedom. We explore the three main areas of health: the physical realm, the biochemical realm, and the mental and emotional realm. We also explore all the areas of lifestyle we can find that will help you live more abundantly, regardless of where you're starting. And remember, in life, you'll either make excuses or create results. You choose. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Hant, and I'm glad to be with you here today. Make sure to head on down to the show notes and click on the link to join our tribe of human-powered life heroes, where we'll update you on new shows, events, product launches, and so much more. Now, it's time to enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Human Powered Life podcast. We have an amazing guest today. This dude is very uncommon, and I think you're really going to enjoy him. This is Anthony Kunkel, dude. I'm very glad to have you here, so welcome.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I'm always stoked to be able to kind of unpack my crazy life so that hopefully I can understand it if nobody else does.
Good, and I love that. And you know, I love being able to have these types of conversations, and usually how I find people like yourself is through people. You know, I'm what do I call it? I'm like an introvert, but I'm an ambivert. So like I can go in between and then I flow. Like when I meet someone like you, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, you should definitely talk to so-and-so, you'll fit. And I'm grateful to have this way to have this conversation with you. And how we got into it is I was talking to one of the guests about ultra marathons, and your name came right out of his mouth, and I'm like, okay, well, I have to talk to this guy then. Like, how do we connect? So can you give people a little bit of your story? Ultra marathon is something I've talked about on my old podcast and this podcast, but you're probably the first person that I know that's at that next level up, like way up there in this world, because it's like, you know, a fraction of the people that run distance is you. So if you don't mind sharing your story.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think we all kind of gravitate to stuff that we're good at. And I think for better or for worse, I think I got a half dose of that tendency. I think I've heard it referred to as negative capacity, you know, the ability to kind of just like wallow in chaos and not really care. And it's been such a steep learning curve. I mean, I was coming off of a pretty standard like high school experience, trying to, you know, track was the other sport and cross country was the main sport. And, you know, graduating high school, I had an acquaintance that I would have loved to say was a mentor, but he was a classic ultra marathoner where it's like, he doesn't want to talk to it. Don't look him straight in the face, you know, like just let him do his thing, wind him up and let him prance away. And so I ended up running my first 50K trail race at 18, like right out of high school. And I got my ass kicked. I mean, like I had never really run trails. I had never run in snow. And this was like trails with 6 inches of snow. So like my hip flexors seized up so bad that like I spent the rest of, it was December. I spent the rest of like the holiday season unable to stand up completely because my hip flexors were so seized up. Like I was literally walking backwards in the snow in road shoes. And like, it took me more than 6 hours to finish the race. And I was so hooked. I was like, okay, I came in blind. I didn't know a thing. And that's like a perfect microcosm for what I've been doing ever since. I don't mind. I don't even feel like I was being humbled. You know, that's like colloquially what we would say. You know, it's like you had big dreams and you got checked, but like, I'd rather keep having big dreams. And I think the process really is where all the magic happens. And so I've just been kind of setting more and more ambitious dreams, despite getting my ass kicked more and more on a higher and higher stage for the last decade at this point. And, you know, I knew at about 13 or 14 that I really didn't want to do anything else beyond run and talk about running and be around runners and like do all this. It was one of those things. I've referred to it as my chasing Mavericks moment, where it's like you see something and you're like, this is what I'm here to do. You're just like, there it is, like that, boom, there it is. And, you know, whether that be through crazy deep delusion that I'm just like any other zealot, that I think there's some divine hand at play here or something, or if I'm actually just lucky enough to be certain, you know, maybe I'm an old soul and this is my last time living life or something, but like I'm positive this is what I'm here to do. And so that's liberating, because everything else kind of just falls away after that. And so I've been reading and talking and engaging and doing all this stuff and kind of contrived this whole life for myself, this whole little sandbox to play in here with all the tools and toys that I want. And now, I'm able to float financially, barely, and be able to share this space with anybody and everybody. So that kind of leads into like my current, the real dream right now is the Ultra House Durango, which is like my house here. And, it's 1,300 square feet. It's a mobile home in Durango, but it's like we have 2 super fancy infrared saunas. We have an incline trainer. We have a full set of weights. We have perfect weather all year round. We're at the perfect altitude. And so now that I've kind of like scooted my life into this optimal flow for my own training, sharing it makes it even better. And so that's really what I'm leaning into more and more as time goes by. And that's a very broad stroke trajectory of a 12-year period. But yeah, we can dive into any of that tickles your fancy. But yeah, man, it's always been very kind of nerdy and arm's length and academic. I mean, I went to school for exercise science. Yeah, I really like the idea that I would just create and share what I'm finding and kind of just dive in fully. And, a lot of people can't or won't do what I'm doing, and I don't think they need to. And so that puts me on the hook to then tell them anything that I possibly might learn, and hopefully puts them on the hook to teach me anything that they might learn off being real human beings. Right.
Yeah. Agreed. So this is really, I think we're going to hit a lot of this, but I think, the way you've lived, I think I never ran in high school. You were running in high school. You have had this experience of meeting an ultra marathoner. And I'm not even sure how old you are, to be honest with you. I'm 42, but I didn't hear about ultra marathons till I was 37. Right. Like, nice. Like I remember showing up my first trail race. Like I signed up for a marathon. It was called the North Face Endurance Challenge Trail Marathon. And we showed up and I see these people I'm not even starting it. And it's people running like the race has started. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? 50K, 50 miler. I'm like, nah, no way. And by the time I finished, I was pre-hypothermic. I could barely walk. And my wife's like, good, we're done. And I'm like, I think there's more. Like that was it was like this weird switch, like where I thought I would have been like, there's no freaking way I would ever want to run more than this. And yeah, you understand how that goes. So
curiosity, man. Curiosity gets you in trouble.
So when you said you got into that first ultra, that first distance, like I'm called like the real distance race, but I truly believe anybody can run a marathon with their body. They don't need to like get out of their body. They can, they can just do it that way. I say people go from their body to their head to their heart and then transcend, like when you go into these ultra races. So what was it for you when you came across that finish line, walking backwards or whatever it was through the snow? What made it you click and go, there's a spark, or there's something more that I want to push harder, farther, faster, whatever it may be?
I think and this has been a really common theme. Now that you're saying this, it clicked a few things into place that I think were disparate until just 3 seconds ago. It wasn't just that I like failed at something, right? Like, I mean, I could have run that course in 4.5 hours or 4 hours maybe. And instead it took me more than 6. And like, just based on fitness at the time, but it wasn't specific fitness. And so getting so beat up by the course and so like overwhelmed by what it was tapping into something that was really, really, really powerful. And I think that's definitely something that you're, already kind of like resonating with here. It was something that was way, way bigger than me, but that even more than that, I thought I understood it. Like that was the real kicker that got me hooked. Is like, it's one thing to be like, all right, as a total non-runner to be like 100 miler, that's dumb. And like, objectively it is like, why would you do this? But it's another thing to be like, oh, like I get this running thing. And then go somewhere or do something and be like, I don't get this at all. Like I thought, whatever diagram that is, that's like a bell curve of feeling like something, or maybe it's even like a limit curve of like, if you know 20% of something, you're an expert. By the time you know 80% about something, you're like, I don't know shit. You know?
The more you know that you don't know.
By further expanding from the known, and then you add in this unknown to it, and then in the ultra world, you're adding in this unknowable factor, which is that's the rush. I mean, that's the like true transcendental rush that like I'm drawn to with so many different aspects of my life. Is the things that you can't say, well, and then this happened and this happened, and then I ate this gel and then I figured it out and then I cramped and then I massaged and then I like took a salt pill. It's like that's the unknown. Like you had to learn something, but there's this whole nother level that's just the totally unknowable that you just can't even touch. And it's like just by coming into contact with it, it's overwhelming in the best possible way.
Yeah. Let's just talk distance for a second, just to give people a concept of what you've been capable of doing, just to kind of give people an idea. For me, like, me running a 24 or running a 100-mile race in under 24 hours was like, well, first it was to finish one was like my super goal. Then it was the second goal would have been to finish under 24 hours. And I finished like whatever it was 22:37. Like I know that number now because that was like a really cool number for me to hear, getting that cool ass belt buckle. And then having to walk half a mile to the car, pushing my race tote, and then, driving another little bit to get to a bed and breakfast and going up 20 stairs or 25 stairs, like where I barely move. I'm just laughing. So the 24-hour number for a lot of ultra runners that are not elite is a big, like a really hard number from what I understand. So I know you're at a very different level. Just share, like, what's a fast race look like to someone like you?
Well, I don't really like taking care of myself. So I guess you could say that's limiting. Like, I really like the idea that I'm not needy and that I don't need things and that I can just be spiritual ether for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And I tend to think that this like whole biohacking thing is just a way for me to do the thinking that I would have to do later now. So it's like, if I can binge on all these X's and O's and all this like real material stuff that's going to limit me, calories and weight and efficiency and all these different factors, then when push comes to shove and when race day gets here, then I'm liberated to just like play like I'm freaking 10 years old and I've never even heard of money or calories or gels. And I'm just like free in the woods and just playing. And so that's been a little bit of, I would say that's been instructive as to where I should go and where I should race. So I don't actually like 100-milers. It's too slow. It's not that it's too long. It's that I have to take care of myself too much to maintain that output for that long. So like, while I have gone 16 hours in a 100-miler, and I tend to think that's a lot more fathomable to think about, 16 hours than it is to think about 100 miles. Like 100 miles is really daunting, but 16 hours is like, people work that long. Like that's a long day, but that's not an abstract long day. I mean, that's something that's palpable. That's tangible. And so I've done a couple 100-milers. I mean, I've probably dropped out of more than I've finished, I think, or it's probably even. It's probably 50-50, which, to be fair, like elite mortality rates, that's what it is. On the start line, 50% of those elites will finish and 50% won't.
Oh, wow.
And,
okay.
That's typical. We're all soaring real close to the sun, and it just happens. And so, I am better than damn near anybody at running for like 4 to 6 hours. So in the mountains, that might be a 50K with 12,000 feet of gain. But on the roads, that might be 100K. That might be 100K of pavement. So it might literally twice as long. So I tend to think in terms of and explain this in terms of hours, because I think it's much more palatable for people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it does make it real, because a 4-hour marathoner, like, I would like to have the 50-mile world record, and ultimately I will run what the current 50-mile world record is or faster. Whether I get the world record or somebody sets it faster, like that's 100% within my capacity. It's 5:47 a mile, and I can do 5:47 pace for longer than anybody. And
that's pretty. So it's like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Like if somebody lowers it, makes it faster, that's their business. World record or not, like I can run that time and it would feel amazing. So it's like I'm going to. Just through pure hedonic drive. Like I just want to know how good that feels to do it. And I don't need people being like, oh my God, it's a world record or it's so fast. Like I want to know what it feels like to feel that limitless for that long.
Yeah.
And just traveling through time and space for 5 hours that fast is gotta just be, it's gotta bring me something that I'm after. And I've had enough experience with things like this.
Yeah.
So I think with that in mind, if I'm doing a 4.5-hour 50-miler and someone's doing a 4.5-hour marathon, they kind of get it. Like they get it more than they think they do. Yeah. The only constraint to that is running fast is fun and running slow is not fun. So there is definitely like, there is the, I really think it's purely selfish and hedonic and and sensual, and just diving in and just enjoying it, because, running fast is fun. It really is.
Yeah. So let's get into that, because, I work full time as a chiropractor. I train. I have 3 days a week that I'm not running. I just like my capacity, like I'm in my, like you said, those 16-hour days. I leave my house at 6 a.m. I get home at like 7:30 p.m. I'm seeing patients.
Yeah.
I love it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's where my energy is very focused. When I get home, I want to spend time with my wife, and then I wake up the next day and run. So what does like a training schedule look like? Because I know you say running fast is fun, and I'm not a fast runner. Like I look at some of the guys that have shown up to these races, and I go, holy shit, this guy. And you just look fast, right? Like that's just they look like they're fast, and I look like 190-pound tall guy. That's like, okay, what is this guy doing at an ultra marathon?
Yeah.
So what is like a training schedule? What does it look like for someone like you?
I like my workout Wednesdays.
Okay.
I like doing it with the crew. That's a chance to do typically like 100K pace work for me, which, like right now, a reasonable 100K pace would be somewhere between 6:15 and 6:25 a mile.
Okay.
And so that would be a little under 6.5 hours for the 100K. And that's a respectable time, but that's not an intimidating time for me. It's going to take perfect weather, perfect shoes, perfect competition, good execution on my part, but it's not intimidating at all. It might be whatever the second or third fastest 100K time by a North American ever, but compared to like Japanese citizens, it's average. It's totally run of the mill because they have financial support to do so. And so, I like running that pace. It really feels like it almost feels like the nuclei of my cells are constantly percolating at a pace that is calmed by running 10 miles per hour. It's like my cells are trying to move that fast. There's a part of them that's just like constantly blowing in the breeze at 10 miles per hour. And if I can just sync up with that, it's like pure bliss. And so I like spending a lot of time at that pace, and that's been instructive as to what kind of races that I want to do. But most of my training is like 9-minute miles. I mean, most of my training is
really interesting.
We did yesterday. I want to say we were like 11.5 minutes a mile. And that was, I don't know, almost 2,000 feet of gain. That was a lot of like technical terrain, but it was no walking. I mean, we're shuffling up, shuffling down on a mountain here in Durango, Animas City Mountain, which is like ridiculously beautiful. Like I would pit it against anywhere. It's the mountain I live on, and I would pit it against any view ever. I mean, it's the Animas Valley below you, and you can see all the way to Silverton. Like you can see parts of the Hard Rock course if you really know what you're looking at, Hard Rock 100.
Yeah.
And the Wemanooch, and it's just, I mean, it's the San Juan Mountains, man. It's the prettiest mountains in the world. It's red rock and blue sky all the time. It's pleasant weather all the time. And it's it's such a treat. And so I'm not in a rush with most of my training. I'm coming off a really deep base. Like last block, I had a 160-mile week in there. I had a
160-mile week.
Yeah. I had a dozen other weeks that were almost as high. And a lot of it's really, really mellow training. And I think it's hard to make time for that. And it's hard to motivate yourself and justify taking that much time for yourself, especially if you don't have a team. Like if you have people to go train with and just shoot the shit and just Kenyan shuffle around and just jog around, then it's easy. But going out there by yourself and taking extra time when you know that you could do it faster is difficult. But I would assert it means more training time for the same training volume. You're spending more time on your feet. And then I believe that your body can get more out of those quality sessions. If you're doing an intentional pace, do that intentional pace. If you're not doing that, then to my mind, the slower, the better. And so
that was going to be a question.
My typical flow. Yeah. I mean, 100 miles is like absolute minimum because I am coming off of a heavier volume training block. And I was prepping for a 100K race that didn't happen. And now I'm prepping for a marathon. And so I just have this short little expedited block where I'll race like 3 or 4 times and take a crack at that Olympic trials marathon standard, or at least getting much, much closer to it. So with that in mind, I'm only doing 100 miles a week right now, which to me, it earnestly happens on accident. Like
that's so mind blowing.
I'll sit down Friday night. I did actually last Friday night. I sat down and said, "Oh man, it's been week 1. I hate week 1s. Once I'm in, my body's beat up. Everything feels great, but it's like this is week 1 at 100, and it's like I'm just feeling low motivation. I'm barely running, I'm like, I probably have a big weekend ahead of me to hit 100 miles this week. And I looked, and it was 20 and 15 was how the split was. There's 35 miles left. And I was like, that's nothing. Like, I can't even get a long run in then. Not that I ever run really beyond 20 miles, but it's like, I'm not even going to have enough to beat me up to find joy. Like, I'm not, that's peanuts. And so like 120 is a real good sweet spot for me. 140 is a stretch. And then beyond that is very, very rarefied air for me.
Hey, we're giving you a short break here where you can head down to the show notes or lifestylelocker.com and join our tribe of human-powered life heroes. You'll be the first to know about new shows, events, product launches, affiliate specials, and more. And now, back to the show.
The only reason I did that 160-mile week, that was part of my Chimayo pilgrimage, if you saw about that. I ran from Durango, Colorado to Chimayo, New Mexico, which is, I don't know, 200 and some miles, and just took my time and did it over 11 days and stopped for hot springs that were en route and slept in the back of a car and had a media guy with me to shoot a documentary and just dove into the Southwest. And, that's the only reason that I had that many miles. But, so my sweet spot's about 120 a week. That's a point where like I can have really good quality on Wednesday. I can have really good quality on the weekend. Yeah. But I cannot possibly oversell the idea that I'm training slow. I mean, 99% of my miles are very, very slow. So like this morning I went out, had a 2-mile warm up at like 9:30 pace, and then had 2 miles at 5:14 average, something like that. And, of course I'm at about 7,000 feet here in Durango. So all my training is definitely, 2,000 meters, serious altitude. Yeah. And then just a 2-mile cool down. And it's like, that's a quick, spicy little pre-podcast workout here. But that's, that's a green marathon pace for 2 measly miles for 10 minutes. That's like not even a workout to a lot of people's mind. But that'll be, one of 2 serious sessions all week long. It's like, I guess 3 different races this weekend, but it's just a prep race. So yeah, I mean, that's the flow of my week is usually Monday and Tuesday are easy. Wednesday's workout Wednesday, some kind of like 100K ish effort. Which for me, again, like in terms of hours, that's 6-hour race pace. So the average person is training harder than that all day, every day. The last time you went out for a run and did 6-hour race effort, it's probably on your worst of worst days. Whereas for me, it's a workout. Yeah. And then on the weekend, I'll run there's a heavy half marathon up here, the Vallecito heavy half, which is right outside Durango, in a spot that I'm land shopping in right now. It's ridiculously beautiful. Just this big lake, up at almost 8,000 feet, surrounded by these huge alpine peaks. And there's snow up there still. So that's a pretty typical flow. Workout Wednesday, easy. And then early in the training block, it'll be like a moderate long run. And that'll get a little longer. Like it was like 15 this week with 2,000 feet of gain, mostly on gravel. Okay. And then that will go up to 20 or 22 or 24, depending on the training block, but not longer than that. Okay. And that'll get slightly sexier as the training block goes. So early on, it'll be slow. It'll be easy. I mean, that 15 miler that I did probably took me as long as the 22 will in 2 or 3 weeks from now, because I'll have a bunch of miles at 5:15 pace instead of 9:15 pace in there. And so it'll kind of, that's kind of, I would say it's intuitive periodization, where I've done this so many times that I know what my body feels like at each different week and each different check mark and checkpoint. And so as the training block goes by, it takes a little less out of me to hit that 120 a week, so I can have slightly more intensity. And then as I move that intensity into my long run is longer and more intense. So then my Mondays and Tuesdays are smaller and less intense. So then my Wednesdays are even more, and my weekend ends up even, it ends up backloading that weekend. It gets even bigger. And so the amplitude just slowly gets bigger as the training block goes. Okay. And then I kind of peak, just intuitively from that. And it's done me right so many times that, I joke that I have an 8-week training block that I can do before a 50 miler down to the half hour in Sardine, where everything is exactly the same for an 8-week period. And so, that's what I was going to ask. Like,
so 8 weeks is like usually like your hardcore training if you're going to have an event.
Yeah, that's a good training block. That's a week or 2 taper, a week or 2 to spin the legs, and about 6 weeks of heavy training. And that'll be sustained volume. That'll be 120 a week for 6 weeks in a row, and then a taper, and then a rest week, or maybe 2 rest weeks, depending on the race. And then I'm right back into the next training block, where I might have a week to spin the wheels at 70 or 50, whatever it needs to be. And then boom, it's right back up to training volume, another 6 weeks or so, and then another race. So I'm never removed from 100+ mile week ever. And so
That's,
I
I
don't have
think
to
I've
carry
had
it.
one
Like,
in my life.
yeah.
That's
I mean, you had
amazing.
two then, right? Because you had your 100
Oh
mile.
yes,
And
two. I've had two. I've had two.
there
I've
you
had
go.
the one day, and then I've
Yeah.
had the I don't you know, what did I, and I don't for me I don't run that week before. I'm just odd. I just like it's I call it my running bank. Like I would have my heavy mileage the week like 2 weeks out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, the bank has been I've made my deposit. Recovery week, which is me just eat, stretch, mobilize, like do things like that. I still work and travel if I want to, like, if it's a travel event, and like I just feel supercharged. So that's just me personally. But so for you, like this is so you have all these training weeks, and I think people are listening go, okay, this is seems like a lot of work, and I want to inspire people to do a little more on a regular basis, because there's a lot to learn in that discomfort area. There's a lot to learn. And I hate to use the word suffering, but sometimes I'll tell you what, to me it is. But
Yeah.
During it sucks. And as you start to go through and deal with it, it feels, I don't even say if it feels, I don't even know if it's the feeling, but like you just have like this, like, okay, like, I remember mile 90 to 100 in my 100 mile that I finished. And it was like a switch turned on when I realized, I'm like, holy shit, 10 miles left.
Mm-hmm.
Then I realized, I'm like, how much more did I really have in the bank? Like before I even got there,
If
like,
10 miles sounds good when you get to it, then you had plenty in the bank.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, holy cow. But so you have all the running days, and for people that are runners or training in any different way, are you doing other things? I know you talk about like biohacking and doing things to be a better version. Are you doing nutritional things? Are you doing like mobilization or yoga or what other things do you incorporate into this? Because there's a lot of intensity, even though it's slow work. You're putting a
Yeah.
lot, you're putting a lot of miles on the car, if you will.
Yeah, it's miles for sure. Yeah, man. I think that's the real kicker. I mean, that's the thing that separates the professionals from people that are working jobs. I mean, you could train 100 miles a week. You could commute to and from work. You could fit it around family. You can get up earlier. You can stay up later. You could do work on the treadmill. I mean, you could walk at your desk. Like you could do 100-mile weeks for sure. It might suck, but what you couldn't do that my life affords me at this point is like I get up at 8:15. I'm not a morning person. That's my version of morning. I get up at 8:15. By 9 o'clock, this morning I was solo, but typically it's with 2 to 3 to at least my training buddy and all of other people. We walk out back. There's 38, 39-degree water flowing rapidly in my backyard. Get in there, a minute up to my belly button, a minute and change up to my belly button, a minute change up to my neck. Meanwhile, my sauna space, they used to call them pocket saunas. The Faraday, it's Faraday cage, it's grounded. It's a mini infrared sauna, and it's just as decadent as saunas get. And it's already running in there. So then I scamper myself back in there. I'm up. I get my morning light in my face being outside. I'm grounded. I'm in the water. It's freezing cold. I'm like, a few moments away from totally shivering. And the average person can't do it. It's like, I mean, 30
water immersion is
moving.
no joke. Yeah.
It's freaking serious. And it's like, at this point, I don't even care. It's like automated. My brain gets perked up, but like my body really doesn't give me any response to it. So mellow breathing, come in, sauna. I'll do my morning pages. So like I'll read a little bit like artist way kind of prompts, real hippie woo woo stuff. I'll free flow thoughts. I'll get my mindfulness. Maybe I'll post on social media, and I'll do all that from the sauna. So I have a 50-minute sauna after that. So I'm a liter into my day, then a liter before the cold and a liter after the sauna. So I'm half a gallon of fluid into the day, and any supplements that I'm going to take for the workout. And, I've been up for, at this point, like 90 minutes. And all I've done is gone to the bathroom, cold plunged, saunaed, written out my thoughts, like checked in on social media. Like I've done basically nothing for anybody. And I've been up for an hour and a half. And then like, especially on harder days, I'm like loafing around and like lubing up my groin, and like I'm like I'll carve up for my legs, or like we have all the toys. I have all the toys set up in the sauna, so it's like I have a roll recovery in there, I have a cupping set in there, I have a scraping set, some salves. So it's like I'm dumping energy into myself, and also getting a certain passive training effect, right? Like cold for mitochondrial biogenesis and the dopamine bump and the central nervous system relaxation or activation. And then, similar stuff, heat shock proteins with the sauna and this whole, like, it's a lot of like passive training in my life.
Yeah.
And so that's every
Powerful.
single morning. I mean, that's functionally, it's 2 to 2.5 hours with a little bit of like glute activation or rolling out my hips or something like that, it's 2 to 2.5 hours just to weigh myself and have my morning routine. And it's
great.
like, that's serious. That's 14 hours a week. I mean, that's a part-time job just to wake myself up every day. And so,
no, well, you use your body for a living. So, I mean, you'd have to,
yeah,
if you don't, you're done in a few
yep,
years.
yeah. So that's a huge thing that's just decadent and elite athlete. And that's part of why I like sharing my space, because people who have big boy jobs, big girl jobs can come here for, I jokingly say $5 a week or $500 to $500 a week, but it's like, that's serious, and show up here and just slip into my whole slipstream here and use all my toys and slide into this whole routine. And it's a trip. I mean, how much progress you can make with all those like passive training modalities is shocking. And it's like, I've had this dream of somebody that would come here and like have a stress fracture or something, and they would be doing all the non-training training, but none of the actual training. And then they would heal up in time for race day, and they would shock themselves with their race, because it really is. I mean, I call it monk mode when I'm like down the rabbit hole, for these 8 weeks, it really is. It's that whole morning routine. I take my run, I finish my run. I have another liter of water. With the last bit of that liter, it might have some protein powder or something in it. I have sardine supreme, which is like this mix of sardines and hemp hearts and saffron. And like, I do this whole sardine thing, and I've been putting it in a thing of nori, maybe with avocado spread. So it's like a sushi-rito basically, and slam that. Keto bricks, which are just these 1,000 calories. Actually, what I'm munching on right now, these little 1,000-calorie cacao butter primarily. And they stack it with all this stuff. And so, yeah, this is the nootropic icing. So it's got all these fancy things in it. And so it's dialed. And I make my own kefir. So kefir, if you don't want to sound pretentious. And so it's like, I'll do a shake of that in the afternoon. And then it's a half to a whole really dark chocolate bar. I'm using 90% right now. And then I'll loaf around. I mean, by then, again, like, to reiterate, I'm 6 hours into my day and I've done nothing but take care of myself and take a run. And so like, that's, even this was like an 11 a.m. mountain time. This is like an early meeting for me. That like 1 to 4 p.m. That's my chance to pretend that I'm a normal person. That's like, I can go out, get a cup of coffee, do writing. Like, I run a Patreon, or like I could go on a date or something middle of the day. Like, that's my chance to really engage as a normal human being, is those 3 hours in the afternoon, or 3 to 4 hours in the afternoon. But alternatively, if I'm feeling it, that's nap time. So that's a very rare thing for me. I'm this amped naturally with nothing, especially after that morning routine. I'm like, let's go, let's change the freaking world. And so yeah, that's the first whatever half of my day, and then I'm beached. Like, if it's an honest workout, if it's a long run or something, like, I'm loafing around for the rest of the day. I'm sitting in the recovery boots, just like pneumatic boots. There's sometimes I'll get a second sauna in. Even more rare than that, I'll get a second cold plunge and a second sauna in. And then my second run's around 5:30, and that's usually with a squad. Like, I direct a group run on Tuesday and Thursday, and then another one on Friday, all at 5:30 here in Durango. And so I'll jog down, or vigorously jog down, and then prance around with the group, and then we'll hang out a little bit, and I get to pretend to be a person again for 90 minutes or whatever it may be. And then it's home by 6:30, 7 p.m. And that's like lounging around. All the lights in the house go off. Everything's all red light after the sun sets, and just protect that melatonin production. And we'll do like movie night. What did we do last night? Like, we did Moulin Rouge this week. We're planning out movies. We're doing that Self Transcendence 3100 movie. We're streaming that this week. So there's always, it's super chill, and everyone sits around and eats whatever their food chow of choice is. For me, it's been ribeyes. That's pretty much my cut of choice, and some greens. And then last week was basically zero carbohydrate, and now this week I have a little bit of, I'll have one, like, I had half a sweet potato last night with some confit eggs, just like some raw egg yolks on top, basically. And that's a day. I mean, I will repeat that plus or minus a very small margin for the next, whatever it is, 4 to 5 weeks. And then I'll take off and race.
Okay. So it's interesting. I was going to start to ask about food before you even started to dive in, but I let you run. How do you run mostly, like, I don't want to say fully keto, but you run a higher fat?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my like marching orders for anybody that asks me like, well, what should I do? You know, like, your life is crazy. What is worth emulating? And I immediately come out of the gates with like no carbs until dinner. Because I think it's one thing to shrink your eating window to, 8 hours and then 16-hour fast. That's fine. But if instead you only eat carbohydrates for an hour with dinner, then you're kind of fasting mimetic for like 23 hours out of the day. And especially when you add some training volume into there, it's some serious stimulus. And I believe that you get more training response out of doing it fasted. And then obviously both of my runs then are fasted glucose. My morning run is done with no calories typically before or during. And then my evening run is I've eaten, but I still typically haven't consumed any calories from carbohydrates. So my evening run is as fast as my morning run from a glucose standpoint. And then if I'm going to carb back up again, which that'll get as high as like 150 or 200 grams a day by the end of the training block, when it gets a little more specific and a little faster and a little sexier, and getting some prep races in there.
Okay.
But yeah, it's very, very low carb for the base. And I believe in fueling for the demands of the day and fueling for the demands of the week. And if what I'm looking for is optimizing beta oxidation, so like not ketosis, but the ability to burn a lot of body fat at the muscle level, to spare that glycogen, I need to be spending a lot of time fasted training, burning a lot of fat. It's worth it to keto adapt for me in the preseason, maybe even during the bulk of season. But with a marathon coming up, I do need to get a little bit rowdier than that. And so the carbs will sneak up to, to my tolerance, which might be really high. A really interesting thing you might be able to appreciate. I did a study with Vespa, if you're familiar with them, last season, just a little like white paper, N of 7 or whatever it was, where we came in and did a test to like basically volitional failure. We were looking for a little bit below VO2 max, but we were using grades and it was a longer test. And then came back the next day, but had Vespa and did a side-by-side comparison. And I think my results weren't all that compelling, although anything is compelling at my level. So, nothing's trivial. But I was coming off the marathon and a little off season, and I was doing 350, maybe 350 grams a day of net carbohydrate. And I went in there and my respiratory data was freakish still. Like I was burning fat, like as anyone who's been keto adapted for 6 months would be burning fat. And that was on like so much carbohydrate. And so I've had this idea that it's beta oxidation that we're looking for, the ability for the muscle to use fat instead of carbohydrate. We're not looking for ketosis per se. Ketosis just kind of happens, right? And so that was a really cool thing to have data to put to it, because it's kind of just been a hunch and something that I've been operating under the assumption is true for quite a few years now. But the data is it's pretty hard. It's pretty compelling when it's that hard to be like, this worked. I'm consuming more carbohydrates than a high carb person might be. And then you put them on there and they're burning 100% calories from carbohydrate, and I'm burning 90% calories from fat, even at a vigorous clip. I mean, I forget what the test maxed out at, like 6% and like 10 miles an hour, 9.4 miles an hour or something like that. I mean, I was not screwing around. Like we were motoring, and it was still just a shocking amount of fat oxidation.
Interesting.
Despite it.
Yeah. I had a chance to go to a nutrition company science lab. I'm not sure if you saw that little thing on the Zoom, like with me on the VO2 max treadmill. Yeah. And they did like all this cool biometric testing. They called me like a professional that's an athlete, not a pro athlete. And they just want to put me through all this stuff as I run ultra marathons. I'm doing like these big hikes and all of this stuff, but I'm not where you are. Like I'm not living that pro athlete life or pro runner life, if you will. And what they found out was I've done pre all this testing, like I did 250s with them in 6 weeks, fully fasted. Like, so no food from the night before until I finished the race. Felt mostly okay. And then I did all this testing with them, and they said, you should probably eat during your runs. I go, why? Like I've done fasted. And they said, I don't know what what all the biometrics were saying in that sense, but I guess when they looked at blood work and then the VO2 max, all of this stuff, they said, you need fuel. Like it's just your body requires, like not everybody will burn the same way. So I would take like, it's a company's called Standard Process. So I'd take this bar that they have. I don't know if I have it in the room here. It's called a Possible bar. and it's 550 calories. It's got like something like 60 grams. It's all food based and supplement based, like 60 grams of fat. So I would run with this, and I was like, holy shit, I can run longer, like without feeling like I'm hitting like that yellow, orange, red line at all.
Yeah.
So, do you feel that it's different? Like, I mean, at your level, do you feel that your diet would be similar to another athlete, similar at your skill level, or is it you think it's very individualistic?
I think we're coming into the era now where we're seeing it with glucose data, we're seeing it with like hydrogels, where like even marathoners might be eating 300 calories an hour of just straight sugar. And what we're seeing is like probably through some general governor, mechanism of like your body. It's not that you're eating sugar and your body utilizing that sugar and it's making your system better. It's that your body sees that your sugar is elevated and it lets you push harder. That's my guess. Although energy availability then by just dumping, if resting glucose is 80 and you're suddenly at 200 for your entire time you're competing, your body is just raging. And I think that comes at a fairly undeniable cost to your health and wellness. Now, if you go to that well once every 6 months, maybe it's not an issue. Professional marathoner doing that. But if you're doing that day in, day out, like if you're fueling 200 calories an hour for all of your training, it's a lot of just like glycation and oxidative stress and things that you really don't want to deal with. But then like you have to train the gut, you have to train the system if you're going to do that on race day. So I think unfortunately we're coming into the era of sacrificing even more health and wellness for slightly more performance at the tippy top end. But that's not really on my radar. I mean, I will consume 100 calories during this next marathon, and that's like splurging for me. I mean, during the whole
race.
Yeah, and that's like whatever 20 calories of breakfast that'll come in a Vespa, or like maybe 100 calories, but it'll be like ketone esters, right?
Okay.
And so kind of alternative calories, if you will. And then during, I'll just do like a Morton gel, like 100, 25 grams of sugar, boom, right to the dome at mile 16 or 18 or something like that. But I think you get a lot more out of the sugar when you're not using it. When you are fat adapted as your base, I think you can use a lot more carbohydrate without tanking your ability to metabolize fat. And so the average person it would behoove them to do most of their stuff fasted, most of their stuff, burning fat and not fueling, both because it costs money to buy these expensive sugars or carry fruit, which is like, again, I want joy. I don't want everything to be a science project. Like I don't want to have to carry anything. I don't want to have to hydrate. I don't want to have to fuel. I would rather just be free and go out there and run. And so with that in mind, I tend to slant a little bit more towards what I would consider to be like the health and wellness focus end of things, of trying to maximize fat metabolism and being a little more stable with your energy. But I would never advocate fueling with fat during a race. I mean, you have an unlimited amount on your body functionally.
Okay.
So I think it's a lot of stress in your GI system. I think it's better to trickle in a small amount of sugar into there, especially if you've had metabolic data done. You can see, okay, I'm burning 90 calories a mile, or maybe 85 because I'm really efficient and I'm elite. Maybe it's even lower than that. But, I'm burning 100 calories a mile for easy math. And I'm 90 of those calories at, 100-mile race pace, let's say, are from fat. So are functionally free. I don't need to worry about them at the time. And 10% of them are from carbs. So it's like if I'm doing 8 miles an hour, that's 80 calories an hour that I have to replenish of glycogen, of glucose. So that's, that's one gel an hour at most. That's not inhibitory. That doesn't stop me from having fun. And so the matter is just teetering how much carbs you actually need. For most of us, it's a pretty small trickle once you've done any kind of fat adaptation at all.
Okay.
So that's what it's about for me.
Okay. No, you got me thinking, because I know when I should say almost all of my distance races, that like ultra distance races that I've done, and even just my training, I prefer to like, I don't like to run too many times with like bars and things like that for the most part. I'll usually have like a little baggie of like a couple dates, some coconut flakes, like chia seed, like kind of like I stick my hand, everything sticks together and I eat it. But you think potentially the reducing the fat, like the coconut, or if I have like Brazil nuts or something in there, just something to chew on, do you think I should just avoid it?
I think you should. I think I can't imagine a world where it's helping you.
Okay. All right. Listen,
I can imagine a world where it's hurting you because it's distracting you. It's taking up space in your stomach. It's taking up blood flow from your legs or your skin if it's hot out to try to process that. And
All
I
right.
can't imagine that it's going to get into your system with any kind of quickness. And even if it was, it's so much easier to just open your fat cells. You know, last time I had a DEXA done, I was 5.4% body fat. So, you know, not a whole lot to burn, but functionally, even for a 100 miler, that's unlimited. I mean, that's
Yeah, no, I get it, that part for
the
sure.
math is ridiculous. Yeah, it's like that means I could torch, you know, 2 or 3 pounds of body fat at 3,500 calories a piece. That'll get me to a 100 miler, you know, with nothing at all. And it's like I've done some serious stuff without calories. Most of my training is done. 99% of my training is done without calories. But yeah, I think the choice really is there are some intermediate things in there, like maybe MCT oil or MCT oil powder, or like C8's a really specific fatty
Yep,
acid,
caprylic acid,
or
yeah.
ketone salts, or certainly ketone esters. You know, those are some fascinating ideas, but I think I would rather take in, as someone who doesn't drink, I would rather take in alcohol than take in fat during an event, because like if I need calories, I can get calories. And it's like, you know, it needs to be something that's basically water soluble and something
Yep.
that's into my system quick and something that I know is actually limiting performance. Whereas fat and protein and that sort of thing, I can burn those from my body and not really have to worry about it.
Interesting. All right. Oh, this is pretty neat. You know, you're giving me a lot of things to test as I drudge forward, if you will, in my training. Do
Sugar
you
and
do
salt, man. Sugar
what
and
is it?
salt. Sugar, salt.
Yeah. I mean, I
Endogenous fat.
definitely I train with
Yeah.
salt. That's for sure, without a doubt. Without a doubt. What do you train, and do you do any indoor training as well?
Just a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
I'm probably going to lift once a week this training block, but like I don't know. I'm tempted to take all my clothes off and show you, but I'm like a $137 right now. And that's
Okay.
like get up, poop, pee, drink a liter of water, $137. So it's like if I didn't drink that liter of water, it'd be like a $135.
Okay.
You know, marathon race weight,
How tall are you?
5'7".
Okay.
So like marathon race weight, if I was really serious about it and was willing to go down the rabbit holes that, you know, my colleagues are to make it happen, would probably be 15 pounds lighter than that.
Wow.
But again, like 5.4% body fat, like that's indiscriminate weight loss. That's like you're waking up every night to pee. You feel like an old man when you're not running.
Yeah.
When you're not running fast.
You're
Really.
not living.
Like,
You're not
libido's
living.
garbage. Yeah, libido's garbage. You're cold in the grocery store.
Yeah.
My body is so robust that even if I don't eat for 3 or 4 days, or you know, don't eat an appreciable amount of food, like just a keto brick and a couple liters of water, which I did on the pilgrimage, I just wasn't hungry. I was all amped up on esters and caffeine. And I just wasn't eating. I was like, I'm not
Very
hungry.
cool.
I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to force feed myself out here. And I felt great. And I doubt that my body weight changed at all. I think through gut health and hormonal health, my body is like, dude, you're going to stay fairly mesomorphic, even trying to get emaciated, eating like, you know, a freaking prisoner of war over here. And so
Yeah.
I will cut some indiscriminate weight. I mean, that's kind of the harsh reality of it. Again, kind of at the tippy top, you are going to be trading a little bit of health and wellness
Yeah.
potentially for a little bit of performance, or a lot of health and wellness temporarily for a tiny bit of performance. And so I will cut a solid like 10 pounds, 8 pounds off of what I'm running around at right now. But
Fair enough. That's
you know,
crazy.
the math says, you know, at this level, it's worth about 2 seconds per pound per mile. So the average person, they think, oh, I lost 10 pounds and I only got 20 seconds off per mile in my marathon time. It's like, that's not worth it if that's why you were doing it. But for me, you know, I went 225 during a 140-mile training week. I went 225 in the marathon, 225 low. And it was on gravel. It was in minimal shoes. It was during a 140-mile training week. And so it's like, how do I get from that to actually running a 217.50 to get into the Olympic trials for the marathon? And one of the ways that I can do it is, you know, perfect taper, you know, a little bit more liberal carb use, hopefully, some more specific training, a little bit of overspeed stuff, some solid super shoes. But in the end of the day, like I need that. If I can lose 5 pounds, that's 10 seconds a mile. I mean, that's most of the way there. So,
That's
you know, we're talking about
crazy.
530. We're talking about 530 per mile is 225, and 515 is what I need.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what trivial gains can I get as someone who's really maximized a lot of my potential? I mean, my engine, my efficiency, a lot of my headspace, a lot of my stuff is damn near perfect, which is cool. I mean, it's a novelty, it's fun, but it's like, that leaves me with very little wiggle room to try to come with a full 15 seconds a mile to cut off of there. And so the clearest answer that I found is I don't need to be this mesomorphic. I don't need to be this truly athletic to run a fast marathon. I need to give up some of that and just get emaciated for like a 3 to 4 week period.
Oh,
and
God.
yeah, and then I'll run real fast, and then my weight will come right back up.
All right. Very cool. So, where's the best place for people to actually find all of your stuff, like your details? You mentioned you have, your running haven, you have your Insta. I know. What are the best places? How would they find you?
Instagram's good. It's free. It's palatable. It's quirky. I story a lot. I post infrequently, but for somebody in my position, I guess, but post regularly enough, and will throw my thoughts or whatever it is that I'm doing out there. And so that's a pretty easy way to access a fairly substantial portion of my life. And then I do run a Patreon. So I don't know, like a dozen people that throw me a cup of coffee worth a month just to be able to have tell all stuff. I mean, there's certain things where thankfully I'm at the point now where there's nothing that I'm shackled to not talk about. I don't have a sponsor that's muzzling anything that I say at this point. But in the past, I have run for shoe companies and companies that wouldn't let me talk about whatever, sex and psychedelics and all the juicy stuff that I like diving into, all the stuff that I think plays perfectly well with running and is all into the same bucket in my mind. And so people can find there, like there's like a mushroom trip report, or actually there's a few of them on there, and it's like, that's fun, juicy stuff that you really can't just like post on Instagram and expect that not to get taken down or shadow banned or something. Although times are changing on that front real quick. So cool. That's a real quick way for me to say, hey, like I believe in X, Y, and Z products, but you can go onto my Patreon and see exactly what I did. Like I started working with Armra Colostrum, amazing company. And I gave them the same ringer that I give everybody, which is like, hey, I'll see, send me some product and I'll see. And like 6 months in, 4 months in, whatever it was, it's like, you guys, this is really good stuff. They're like, yeah, we know. I was like, let's get something together. So it's like, people on social media just see, hey guys, another day, another packet of colostrum, keeping that gut permeability up. And it falls into the same category as all the phony bullshit. But the people that have been watching for months and months and months are like, he wasn't sure about this stuff. That's kind of cool. If I'm willing to stand behind something at this point in my life, my soul is too expensive for anybody to afford. Like I'm already floating. Like you can't buy me. And so to have a sponsor lineup of stuff that I earnestly really, really believe in is a gift. But if you want to go in there and see the stuff that I can't even say on record, that's like, well, and then I thought maybe this didn't work. And then I tried it with this person. I did all this stuff what am I going to do? A series of 20 Instagram posts, maxing out the number of characters I can have to talk about this N05 white paper that we're doing out of my house. It's like, sometimes I try to with a featured story, but so yeah, a lot of that's what ends up on my Patreon. And then, yeah, of course, people can show up at my house. I mean, I'm calling it Project Mayhem, which is a Fight Club reference. So, the first rule is don't ask questions. The second rule is don't ask questions. Way down on the list of rules is you have to trust Mr. Durden, or in this case, Mr. Kunkel. You have to trust me infinitely and just show up here. We'll show you a good time. We'll change your life. And then that's all on donation only. That's another camp that I'm saying it's $500 to $500 for the week. And, it's flexible dates. It's, what is it, the 10th today? The 11th, 10th, whatever it is.
Something, yeah.
Yeah. And I already have people here, and my camp doesn't start till the 14th. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people here already. And so it's like, and none of them are paying anything. We're all using saunas. We're cold plunging in the morning. We trained together all yesterday. I had this podcast and had some quicker miles this morning. So they all went up to the La Plata Canyon and they're getting above tree line today. And I had to keep it low and flatter and earlier in the day. And so, yeah, man, I mean, that's the real dream is like, don't believe me. Don't use my affiliate codes. Don't follow me on social media. Just show up at my house. Why not?
See what it's really about.
Yep.
Yeah, that's totally cool. So everybody, Anthony Kunkel, Superman, I should say, reincarnated here as an ultra runner. So I want to thank you so much. Everybody just hang on, head over to lifestylelocker.com. And on his page, what you'll end up seeing is you'll see the second part, which we're going to spend a few minutes just talking about maybe some biohacks that he absolutely loves. All right. So Anthony, thank you. This has been a blast.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Human Powered Life podcast. Make sure to head over to lifestylelocker.com to check out all the details on the show and to watch part 2 of this episode, which is only in video format. We also have this audio portion in video format if you want. Once again, I'm your host, Dr. Josh Hant, for the Human Powered Life podcast, and I'm looking forward to staying connected with you as a Human Powered Life hero. Remember to join the tribe, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.